Ben.
Evening.
Thank you for coming in. I don't know if you heard the trainer of Hill 16.
Yeah.
But he says that the disruption caused, the tension that caused with a highly strung animal, was one of the reasons Hill 16 died.
Yeah.
Now, you're a protester, you are protesting in favour of animal rights. That must be the last thing you want to happen.
Yeah, so I've been hearing this all day. I was actually on the BBC with him earlier this morning, and it's just ridiculous. So I was on a Talk TV a week ago with the great Julia Hartley-Brewer, and said the reason we're just going to disrupt the Grand National is because I watched a video from 2019, and over the first jump a horse falls over and breaks their neck. And then when I watched the video most recently, I actually thought it was a video from the same year. It was a completely predictable outcome, and there's nothing.
But this horse has got around the course safely many times before, and you could see from the preparation beforehand that the animals were getting very stressed by the delay in starting, and that was the wrong way for them to be starting the race.
I mean, I'm sure Sandy's a nice guy, but there's clearly a vested interest.
He knows animals, wouldn't he? Because he trains them.
Yeah.
You know, he would know his horses, and trainers have a very close relationship with their horses.
Yeah, so if the horses really were clearly that stressed, they could have decided not to run the race. We were trying to stop the race. We didn't want it to run. But of course they wouldn't stop running the race, because there's hundreds of millions bet on it. And all the breeders also want to make money from the horses winning. So the only reason the horses are running that race is to make money.
Well, and it's a legal activity that people are allowed to do this. If you want to stop horse racing, why don't you stand for Parliament on that platform?
Well, maybe I will one day, but that's a long way away. But I don't think I've ever seen an action of this type that caused disruption on this scale to receive so much public support. If you've been listening to any of the radio call-ins, or even the comments, the trolls have gone running. There's huge public support for this. So
if there's support for it, I'll go back to my question, why don't you stand for Parliament? Because if there's that much support for it, you would win elections. Yeah,
well, protest is... so this is about democracy, and protest is a fundamental part of democracy. It always has been, and it always will be. So there's nothing unusual about people...
Oh, but there's protest and protest, isn't there? Yeah. I mean, I think we can, maybe... good time to look at the events from the Crucible this evening, because there's been a protest there. And do you think that is a legitimate form of protest too, to the extent you've heard about it? We're going to see the clip now.
Well, I don't quite know what that was for. Terrible scene.
And do you think that's democratic protest or that's hooliganism?
Well, they're trying to raise the alarm on the climate crisis, and they didn't hurt anyone. But is that effective? That's the question. Is that effective? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But that's not really what we didn't organise it.
But you were trying to do the same thing, effectively. You were trying to disrupt and stop a race that gives people a lot of pleasure, that's a legal activity. You could have marched in Parliament Square. That's a legitimate form of protest, rather than this violent, aggressive protest that disrupts legal events. That's where I think there's a dividing line.
Well, it wasn't violent or aggressive. So people just walked onto the racecourse. Everyone was wearing pink T-shirts, and it was completely... There were 100... And also there's a certain democratic element to it. It was 118 people got arrested, and that's not... And you can say that's a small number, but it's not 118 people signing a petition. People really do care about this, and that's been reflected by the amount of support.
But is that why you have to go for direct action? Because actually 118 marching down Whitehall, you wouldn't even notice, would you? They'd all be on the pavement.
Yeah, of course. You'd of course, just walking down the street doing nothing. So you have to cause a fuss, and that's how...
But do you, or is this symbolic of the fact you've got very small numbers, and therefore to get attention, you have to take extreme measures?
We haven't got very small numbers, so...
Then why didn't you have a proper march down Whitehall to show your big numbers?
I mean, if you've organised a protest, even if you've got 10,000 people marching down Whitehall, you wouldn't get pressed for it.
So you've got small numbers. That's the thing. On the Iraq War, they had 2 million people marching down Whitehall.
Well, the Iraq War
on the Countryside Alliance, in favour of countryside pursuits, they had over 1 million people marching down Whitehall. That's why I'm saying to you, it's small numbers.
I never heard of that either.
So you have to be disruptive, you have to do things that are illegal, because you don't actually have democratic support.
I think it's quite hard to get... people are willing... Everyone there got arrested and may face legal consequences. So that's I guess you could say, the tip of the iceberg. But there is a huge amount of support. honestly, LBC, it was the jockey. The only people coming out to defend it are the Horse Jockey Association, breeders, and racehorse trainers, and your
You
good self.
keep on saying there's huge amount of support. You've got 118 people. You don't stand for Parliament. You don't try and win elections. You don't try and organise proper marches. Because actually you haven't got huge support. You've got a few people on social media. That's not huge support.
Well, we're going to see, actually, because there's the YouGov poll. They've said today they're going to test. It's going to be about the Grand National. So we can debate we can go around in circles. But yeah, we'll see on that how much support there is.
I'd reiterate my challenge that you should stand for Parliament. Because if you really believe that there is popular support for this, you may need to persuade a political party to take up this cause or set up your own party. But it's the same challenge to the Just Stop Oil people. If you really believe you've got this support, why on earth aren't you standing for Parliament?
Yeah.
I would hope to give you the last word. I've talked too much.